The air in the neighborhood seemed to hold its breath as the moving truck rumbled to a stop in front of the house at the end of the street. It was an old, dilapidated structure with ivy crawling up its walls, casting eerie shadows in the dying light of the day. A shiver ran down Sarah's spine as she watched from her bedroom window, curiosity mingling with a sense of foreboding. The new neighbor, Mr. Harris, was a mystery to the residents of the quiet suburb. His arrival was sudden, announced by neither word nor gesture. Whispers spread like wildfire among the neighbors, speculating about his past and the reasons for his seclusion. Sarah, being naturally curious, found herself drawn to the enigma that was Mr. Harris. As days turned into weeks, Sarah noticed peculiar occurrences. She would often catch glimpses of Mr. Harris lurking in the shadows, his figure blending seamlessly with the darkness. Sometimes she would find him standing at the edge of his property, staring fixedly at her house with an intensity that sent chills down her spine. One night, as Sarah lay awake in bed, she heard the faint sound of footsteps outside her window. Heart pounding, she peered through the curtains and saw Mr. Harris, his eyes gleaming in the moonlight as he stood beneath the sycamore tree that separated their properties. Frozen in fear, Sarah watched as he raised a finger to his lips, signaling for her to keep silent before disappearing into the night. From that moment on, Sarah felt as though she was being watched constantly. She would find strange objects left on her doorstep, a single red rose, a torn photograph, a cryptic note written in a language she couldn't decipher. Each time, she would confront Mr. Harris, only to be met with a blank stare and a dismissive wave of his hand. As weeks turned into months, Sarah's fear turned to paranoia. She installed security cameras around her property, double-checked the locks on her doors and windows, and even considered moving away. But no matter what she did, she couldn't shake the feeling that Mr. Harris was always one step ahead of her, lurking in the shadows, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. And then, one stormy night, Sarah's worst fears were realized. She awoke to the sound of glass shattering and the howling wind. Racing downstairs, she found the front door hanging off its hinges, the hallway strewn with broken shards of glass. Panic rising in her chest, she called out for help, but there was no response. As she crept through the house, flashlight in hand, Sarah felt a presence behind her, a cold breath on the back of her neck. Whirling around, she came face to face with Mr. Harris, his eyes burning with a madness she had never seen before. "You shouldn't have come looking for me, Sarah," he whispered, his voice sending shivers down her spine. "Now you belong to me forever." With a strength born of desperation, Sarah pushed past him and fled into the night, the echoes of his laughter following her as she disappeared into the darkness. The photograph had been gathering dust in the attic for as long as Emily could remember. It was an old family portrait taken decades ago, featuring her great-grandparents and their children. But there was something about the picture that always unnerved her, the way the faces seemed to stare out from the past with accusing eyes, as though they knew something she didn't. One rainy afternoon, Emily found herself alone in the house, the sound of the rain drumming against the windows like 1,000 ghostly whispers. Curiosity getting the better of her, she climbed the creaky stairs to the attic and retrieved the photograph from its hiding place. As she studied the faces in the picture, Emily felt a chill run down her spine. There was something different about it this time, something she couldn't quite put her finger on. And then she saw it, a figure lurking in the background, obscured by the shadows, its eyes fixed on her with an intensity that made her blood run cold. Heart pounding, Emily dropped the photograph and stumbled backward, her breath coming in ragged gasps. She had never noticed the figure before, never realized that there was something lurking in the darkness of her family's past. Determined to uncover the truth, Emily delved into her family history, scouring old newspapers and dusty archives for any mention of the mysterious figure in the photograph. But the more she searched, the more she realized that some secrets were meant to stay buried. One night, as Emily lay awake in bed, she heard the sound of footsteps outside her window. Heart pounding, she peered through the curtains and saw a shadowy figure standing in the moonlight, its eyes fixed on her with a hunger that sent shivers down her spine. Frozen in fear, Emily watched as the figure raised a finger to its lips, signaling for her to keep silent before disappearing into the night. And then she knew. the figure in the photograph, the footsteps in the night, they were all connected, pieces of a puzzle she was never meant to solve. As days turned into weeks, Emily's fear turned to obsession. She became convinced that the figure in the photograph was stalking her, watching her every move from the shadows. She would find strange objects left on her doorstep, a single black feather, a lock of hair, a torn piece of fabric, each one a sinister reminder of the darkness that lurked just beyond her sight. And then one stormy night, Emily's worst fears were realized. She awoke to the sound of glass shattering and the howling wind. Racing downstairs, she found the front door hanging off its hinges, the hallway strewn with broken shards of glass. Panic rising in her chest, Emily called out for help, but there was no response. And then she saw it, the figure from the photograph, standing in the doorway with eyes that gleamed with a madness she had never seen before. "You shouldn't have come looking for me, Emily," it whispered, its voice sending shivers down her spine. "Now you belong to me forever." With a strength born of desperation, Emily pushed past it and fled into the night, the echoes of its laughter following her as she disappeared into the darkness. The house had stood empty for as long as Mark could remember. It was a crumbling ruin, its windows boarded up, its gardens choked with weeds. But there was something about the place that drew him in, a sense of curiosity mingled with fear that made his pulse race with excitement. One night, as Mark walked past the house on his way home from work, he noticed a faint light flickering in one of the upstairs windows. Heart pounding, he stopped in his tracks and peered through the darkness, trying to make out the source of the light. And then he saw her, a figure standing in the window, her face obscured by the shadows, her eyes fixed on him with a hunger that sent shivers down his spine. Frozen in fear, Mark watched as she raised a finger to her lips, signaling for him to keep silent before disappearing into the darkness. Determined to uncover the truth, Mark returned to the house night after night, searching for any sign of the mysterious figure that haunted his dreams. But each time he entered the crumbling ruin, he found nothing but darkness and silence, the faint echo of laughter lingering in the air like a ghostly whisper. As weeks turned into months, Mark's obsession with the house grew, consuming his every waking thought. He became convinced that the figure in the window was stalking him, watching his every move from the shadows. He would find strange objects left on his doorstep, a single white rose, a lock of hair, a torn piece of fabric, each one a sinister reminder of the darkness that lurked just beyond his sight. And then, one stormy night, Mark's worst fears were realized. He awoke to the sound of footsteps outside his window, the howling wind drowning out his cries for help. Racing downstairs, he found the front door hanging off its hinges, the hallway strewn with broken shards of glass. Panic rising in his chest, Mark called out for help, but there was no response. And then he saw her, the figure from the house, standing in the doorway with eyes that gleamed with a madness he had never seen before. "You shouldn't have come looking for me, Mark," she whispered, her voice sending shivers down his spine. "Now you belong to me forever." With a strength born of desperation, Mark pushed past her and fled into the night, the echoes of her laughter following him as he disappeared into the darkness.